In a seemingly routine evening drive, Cedarville's mayor, Marcus Jones, faces an unexpected and unsettling encounter with a police officer. What begins as a simple traffic stop quickly spirals into a dramatic and distressing situation when the officer's behavior becomes increasingly hostile and intrusive. Despite Marcus's attempts to remain calm and cooperative, he is subjected to unnecessary scrutiny and detention. As the truth about his identity unfolds, the encounter takes a sobering turn, revealing deeper issues of racial bias and abuse of power. Marcus's peaceful evening is shattered, leading him to confront systemic problems that go beyond his ordeal. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. A racist police officer, driven by a prejudiced agenda, unjustly pulls over a black man for no legitimate reason. To his dismay, the officer later discovers that the man he has arrested is none other than the city's mayor. Marcus Jones was feeling the weight of a demanding day as he navigated through the streets of his city. He had spent hours in the bustling corridors of City Hall, engaged in endless meetings that required tough decisions and tireless negotiations. As evening approached, Marcus was eager for a moment of respite in the comfort of his home. His thoughts were already shifting to the quiet dinner he planned to enjoy, a stark contrast to the day's relentless pace. As he neared the intersection of Maple and Oak, the tranquility of dusk was abruptly shattered by the sudden and jarring flash of blue and red lights that cut through the evening gloom. Marcus's heart immediately sank into a knot of anxiety. He knew he had been driving within the law, no speeding, no erratic maneuvers, so the reason for the stop was a mystery to him. Instinctively, he guided his vehicle to the side of the road, the gravel crunching under the tires as he came to a complete stop. He glanced nervously at his rearview mirror, noting the police cruiser's imposing presence behind him. The officer in question was a hefty man in his mid-30s, with a strong, assertive gait as he emerged from his vehicle. His uniform was meticulously pressed, the brass of his badge catching the last rays of sunlight in a way that seemed almost too deliberate. Marcus took a deep breath, his fingers curling tightly around the steering wheel, bracing himself for the encounter. The officer approached with a purposeful stride, his gaze fixed intently on Marcus. As he reached the driver's side window, Marcus rolled it down, his voice calm yet tinged with a note of concern. "Good evening, officer," he said, trying to project an air of civility. The officer's response was curt, lacking any warmth. "Evening. Do you know why I pulled you over?" Marcus frowned, confusion clouding his features. "I don't believe I've done anything wrong." The officer's eyes narrowed as he peered into the interior of the car with a scrutinizing glare. His voice was edged with impatience. "I need to see your license and registration." Marcus handed over the requested documents, striving to maintain his composure under the mounting tension. "Could you please explain why you stopped me?" The officer took the documents and examined them with an exaggerated air of suspicion, tapping them against his palm as if searching for something amiss. "I noticed you were driving a bit too close to the center line. I'm just ensuring everything's in order." Marcus looked around at the deserted streets, his unease growing. "I don't recall crossing the center line. I've driven this route countless times without issue." The officer did not immediately answer. Instead, he continued to study Marcus with a hard, unyielding stare. "Where are you headed?" "Home," Marcus replied, his voice weary. "It's been a long day. I just want to get back." The officer's demeanor grew more rigid and accusatory. "You seem unusually calm for someone who was driving too close to the center line." Marcus's eyebrows knitted together in confusion. "I'm just following your instructions. I don't understand why this is turning into such a big deal." Without warning, the officer's tone took on a harsher edge. "Well, let's see if there's anything else that warrants our concern. Step out of the vehicle." Marcus's pulse quickened, a surge of alarm rising in his chest. Is this necessary? I haven't broken any laws. The officer's face remained a mask of stern resolve. It's standard procedure. Just step out of the car. Reluctantly, Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out of the car, his heart pounding in his chest. The officer's deliberate and hostile search of his vehicle felt like an invasion of his personal space, each motion laden with an unsettling sense of animosity. Marcus stood on the curb, his body tense and his mind racing. The frustration of being unjustly targeted mingled with a profound sense of helplessness. The once comforting thought of a peaceful evening at home now seemed like a distant dream, replaced by the stark reality of an unwarranted encounter with law enforcement. The officer's disregard for Marcus's dignity and the escalating tension left him grappling with a growing unease that was as palpable as the cool evening air. I assure you there's nothing illegal in the car, Marcus said, his voice quivering slightly despite his effort to remain composed. His attempt at reassurance felt hollow against the officer's scornful demeanor. As the officer continued to methodically sift through his belongings, muttering dismissive comments under his breath, Marcus's frustration deepened. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness, each second stretching the limits of his patience and resolve. The passers-by, initially curious, now wore expressions of concern as they observed the unfolding drama. Their silent witness to the situation only heightened Marcus's sense of isolation and indignation, amplifying the disquiet that was fast becoming a heavy burden on his shoulders. Finally, when the officer straightened up and flashed a smirk, Marcus felt a surge of dismay. Well, everything seems to be in order, but I still don't like the way you're handling this, the officer said, his words dripping with condescension. Marcus's heart sank further as he tried to maintain a semblance of calm. I don't understand what's happening here. Can I please go now, he pleaded, the question hanging in the air like a desperate cry for relief. The officer's refusal to address the query and his insistence on running a record check only served to heighten Marcus's anxiety. The sense of injustice and the absurdity of the situation left him feeling vulnerable and powerless. As the officer retreated to his cruiser, Marcus remained by the roadside, his thoughts swirling in a turbulent storm of worry and frustration. He glanced at his watch, noting with dismay how the minutes were slipping away, each tick a reminder of the time lost to this distressing ordeal. The promise of a quiet evening at home felt increasingly elusive, replaced by an unsettling sense of unease that seemed to seep into every corner of his being. The quiet night contrasted sharply with the charged atmosphere of the traffic stop, intensifying Marcus's sense of alienation and dread. He stood in the cooling air, the chill of the evening penetrating his coat, as the flashing lights of the cruiser cast a disconcerting blue hue over the still streets of Cedarville. Marcus shifted his weight restlessly, each movement a testament to his growing anxiety. Officer Reynolds, seated in his cruiser, appeared to be a distant, almost menacing figure bathed in the harsh glow of the dashboard lights. The officer's deliberate actions only served to heighten Marcus's sense of unease and frustration. The onlookers, their faces reflecting a mixture of concern and curiosity, seemed to add to the weight of the situation, their silent presence a reminder of Marcus's helplessness. When Reynolds finally emerged from his cruiser, holding a clipboard and bearing a frown of disapproval, the sight only intensified Marcus's emotional turmoil. The officer's approach was marked by a chilling sense of authority, and as he announced his intention to check the trunk, Marcus felt the weight of his anxiety grow heavier, overshadowing the promise of a simple return to normalcy. Marcus's patience was fraying. His voice edged with frustration. He said, "I've already told you that there's nothing illegal in the car. This feels excessive and completely unnecessary." Reynolds' eyes narrowed into a hard stare. "It's standard procedure," he replied with a tone that suggested he was in no mood for arguments. "Now open the trunk." With a resigned sigh, Marcus unlocked the trunk and lifted it open. Inside were a few bags of groceries and a gym bag, nothing that would raise suspicion in anyone. Reynolds peered inside with a scrutinizing glare that conveyed an unsettling mix of skepticism and determination. "Anything else in here I should know about?" Reynolds asked, his voice dripping with condescension, as if he were questioning Marcus's very integrity. Marcus sighed deeply, his exasperation evident. "No, it's just groceries and personal items. Can I please go home now?" Instead of answering, Reynolds continued his inspection of the trunk, moving items around with a deliberate slowness that seemed designed to provoke. It was clear that Reynolds was searching for anything that might justify this extended stop. Marcus watched him, his frustration escalating as Reynolds's behavior grew increasingly intrusive. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. "Look, this has gone on long enough," Marcus said, his voice rising in both volume and agitation. "I don't understand why I'm being treated like this. I've been nothing but cooperative and polite." Reynolds slammed the trunk shut with an abrupt motion and turned to face Marcus with a smug, self-satisfied expression. "Well, now that we're done with the car, I need to verify your information." Marcus's eyes widened in alarm. "Verify my information? What exactly are you looking for?" Reynolds didn't provide a direct answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly, his fingers moving with a sense of urgency that only added to the mounting tension. Marcus felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach as the minutes ticked by. After what felt like an eternity, Reynolds looked up from his phone, his face inscrutable. "I'm going to issue you a citation." A citation? For what? Marcus's voice was thick with incredulity. "I haven't broken any laws." "Your record check came back with some discrepancies," Reynolds said, his tone devoid of empathy or explanation. "Just a precaution." Marcus struggled to keep his composure, but the frustration was evident in his clenched jaw and rigid posture. "Discrepancies? I've given you all the correct information. I don't understand why this is happening." Ignoring Marcus's protests, Reynolds began to fill out the citation. Each moment seemed to stretch interminably as Marcus's anger and sense of helplessness grew. The process felt deliberate, an endless loop of bureaucratic red tape that only served to amplify Marcus's frustration. He observed Reynolds working with painstakingly deliberate slowness, each movement methodically precise, as if executed with a preordained purpose. The night air grew colder, and the silence of the evening seemed to stretch indefinitely as Reynolds finally extended the citation to Marcus. His demeanor remained resolutely stern, an unyielding mask of authority that offered no hint of empathy or understanding. "You need to sign this," Reynolds instructed, his voice devoid of warmth. Marcus's eyes fell upon the paper, scanning the legal jargon that seemed to mock him with its complexity. The dense legalese felt like a foreign language, amplifying his confusion and frustration. It wasn't merely a citation, it was a symbol of the injustice he felt enveloping him. "I don't agree with this at all, but fine. I'll sign it," Marcus said, his voice quivering with barely contained frustration and a sense of helplessness. As he scrawled his signature on the citation, Reynolds's expression remained an impenetrable fortress, showing no sign of sympathy or reconsideration. The officer's unrelenting stare only deepened Marcus's sense of betrayal and injustice. "You'll receive a court date in the mail. Until then, you're free to go," Reynolds said, his tone unaltered. Marcus took a deep, steadying breath, his emotions roiling beneath the surface. He tried to compose himself, but the heaviness of the situation pressed down on him like a physical weight. "Thank you. I hope this matter can be resolved swiftly and justly," Marcus replied, though his words felt hollow and inadequate. Reynolds offered no response, his back turned as he made his way back to his cruiser, the finality of his departure underscoring the gravity of Marcus's predicament. Marcus watched the officer leave, feeling a profound sense of injustice settle heavily over him, like a shroud of darkness. As he climbed back into his car, the chill of the evening seemed to seep into his very soul, amplifying his sense of isolation and betrayal. The citation in his hands was a tangible reminder of the system's failure, and the peaceful evening he had anticipated was now marred by this unsettling encounter, leaving him to grapple with a deep-seated mistrust in the fairness of a system he had always believed to be just. The drive to the Cedarville police precinct was interminable, each minute dragging out like an eternity as Marcus's frustration mounted. The streetlights flickered erratically overhead, casting fleeting, haunting shadows that danced unpredictably across his windshield, mirroring the turmoil within him. The drive, meant to be a short trip, stretched endlessly, with every passing moment amplifying his sense of helplessness and growing anxiety. When he finally reached the precinct, the sharp contrast between the quiet, shadowy streets and the harsh, fluorescent-lit interior was jarring. The precinct was alive with a frenetic energy, phones ringing off the hooks, conversations blending into a chaotic murmur, and the clattering of keyboards filling the air with a relentless clamor. Still shackled and feeling the sting of humiliation, Marcus was led through the precinct entrance by Officer Reynolds, whose stern and unyielding demeanor had remained unchanged. The precinct's interior was a stark and disorienting contrast to the quiet street outside. The cacophony of activity seemed almost oppressive, and the clamor only heightened Marcus's sense of anxiety and despair. His heart raced in his chest, each beat a reminder of his mounting frustration and helplessness as he was guided past the reception desk and into the booking area. "Why am I being treated like this?" Marcus asked, his voice strained and filled with a mixture of anger and despair. The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of his confusion and the deep sense of injustice he felt. Reynolds remained silent, his stoic demeanor unbroken as he directed Marcus to a metal bench near the booking counter. Marcus sank onto the bench, the cold steel biting into him, a physical manifestation of the emotional chill settling over him. His hands were still restrained behind him, and he glanced around at the busy officers and clerks, trying to ignore the curious stares and occasional frowns from the staff. The feeling of being watched and judged added another layer of discomfort to an already unbearable situation. A female officer approached, her face a mask of professional detachment. "What's the charge?" she asked, her tone neutral but laced with underlying curiosity. Reynolds glanced briefly at Marcus before responding, his voice carrying the same indifferent tone. "Suspicion of illegal activity. We're just processing him for now." The female officer's eyebrows knit together in confusion, a flicker of concern crossing her face. Illegal activity? For what specifically? Discrepancies on his record, Reynolds said dismissively, his tone betraying a lack of interest in the details. The booking officer, a woman with a kind face, glanced at Marcus with a flicker of sympathy that contrasted sharply with Reynolds' attitude. "Name?" she asked, her voice gentle yet firm. "Marcus Jones," he responded, his voice laced with both frustration and resignation. "I'm the mayor of Cedarville." The booking officer's eyes widened in surprise, and her professional demeanor faltered for a moment. "You're the mayor?" she asked, clearly taken aback. Marcus nodded, his frustration becoming more apparent. "Yes, I am. But I don't see how that changes anything. I need to understand why I'm being detained." Turning towards Reynolds, the booking officer's expression shifted to one of concern and confusion. Why wasn't this information verified before bringing him in? Reynolds' face grew stern, his patience wearing thin. "It was just a routine stop. We had to follow procedure." The booking officer exhaled heavily, her discomfort with the situation clear. "I'll need to confirm his identity and sort this out." As she began to make calls and sift through paperwork, Reynolds stepped away, leaving Marcus alone with his mounting anxiety. The room was filled with the soft murmur of conversations and the occasional clatter of papers, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. Marcus's frustration grew with each passing minute. After what felt like an eternity, the booking officer returned, holding a stack of papers. "I've confirmed your identity, Mr. Jones. I'm afraid Officer Reynolds' actions were not appropriate." Marcus's eyes narrowed, his frustration boiling over. "So what happens now?" The booking officer sighed deeply. "We'll need to release you, and I'll ensure that this incident is reported." As she removed the handcuffs, Marcus rubbed his wrists, feeling the lingering sting of the metal. He stood up, his body tense and his emotions running high with anger and disbelief. Reynolds reappeared, his face a mask of defiance and irritation. "You're free to go," Reynolds said curtly. "You'll receive a citation in the mail." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I want to understand why this happened. This was a clear abuse of power." Reynolds's gaze remained cold and unyielding. "You'll have to address that with the department." Marcus turned on his heel and strode toward the exit, his frustration palpable in each decisive step. As he left the precinct, the faint murmur of conversations and the buzz of ongoing activity continued unabated behind him, a stark reminder of the world that seemed indifferent to his turmoil. The cool, crisp night air outside was a sharp contrast to the heated emotions that still roiled within him. He slid into his car, the familiar comfort of the seat offering little solace. His mind raced with a torrent of thoughts, grappling with the implications of the unjust encounter he had just endured. The peaceful evening he had envisioned was now shattered, replaced by a profound sense of betrayal and a burgeoning resolve to confront and rectify the wrongs he had faced. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As he drove through the streets of Cedarville, the city lights blurred into a smear of colors, reflecting the disarray of his thoughts. Marcus understood that this incident was far more than a mere traffic stop gone awry. It was a glaring manifestation of deeper, systemic issues that demanded urgent attention. The road ahead seemed shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing was unequivocally clear: this confrontation was far from over. The imposing facade of the Cedarville Police Precinct loomed large in the dim light of early evening, a stark symbol of the institutional challenge Marcus was now determined to address. Inside the precinct, Marcus found himself in a small, starkly lit room designated for interviews and briefings. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a harsh, clinical glow that seemed to amplify the plainness of the room's walls and the coldness of the wooden table. The atmosphere was tense, laden with unspoken frustrations and the weight of unresolved grievances. The door creaked open, and Detective Mitchell entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. Tall and graying, Mitchell exuded an air of authority tempered with a hint of sympathy. He gave Marcus a nod of acknowledgement before taking a seat across from him. His expression was a blend of concern and curiosity, reflecting the seriousness of the situation. "Mr. Jones," Mitchell began, his voice steady but underscored with an empathetic undertone. "I understand there's been a bit of a mix-up. I'm here to get to the bottom of this." Marcus looked up, his face a portrait of frustration and hurt. "It wasn't just a mix-up," he said, his voice taut with emotion. "I was stopped, searched, and detained without cause. Officer Reynolds didn't provide any clear answers or justifications for his actions." Mitchell nodded, his acknowledgement of the gravity of the situation evident in his demeanor. "We've been reviewing the reports and talking to witnesses. This is more than a simple procedural error. There are serious issues here." As Mitchell spoke, the door opened once more, and Officer Reynolds entered, his face a mask of stubborn defiance. He cast a brief, dismissive glance at Marcus before taking a seat beside Mitchell. The room's atmosphere grew palpably tense as Reynolds settled into his chair, deliberately avoiding eye contact with Marcus. Mitchell's gaze shifted from professional detachment to stern scrutiny as he addressed Reynolds. "Officer Reynolds, could you explain your actions?" Reynolds shifted uncomfortably, his defensiveness apparent. "I pulled Mr. Jones over because he was driving too close to the center line. I followed standard procedure in conducting a search and checking his records." Marcus's frustration boiled over, his voice rising in protest. "Standard procedure? I was compliant and polite throughout the encounter. There was no reason for the situation to escalate in such a manner." Mitchell's gaze shifted between Marcus and Reynolds, his demeanor steady and authoritative. "Officer Reynolds, you need to understand that this situation goes beyond a simple traffic stop. There are serious allegations of racial bias and misconduct here. We need a clear explanation for why you acted the way you did." Reynolds's face grew rigid, his defensiveness apparent. "I did what I believed was necessary to ensure there was no illegal activity occurring. If there's an issue with my methods, then that's something the department will need to address." Mitchell's eyes remained unwavering. "We're addressing it now. Mr. Jones's identity has been verified, and it's clear that his treatment was unjustified. I need you to explain why you proceeded with an arrest when there was no legal basis for it." Reynolds' stance remained unyielding. "I was simply doing my job. If Mr. Jones had nothing to hide, he wouldn't have reacted so angrily." Marcus's frustration reached a boiling point. "I was upset because I was being treated unfairly. This isn't just about me, it's about how you treat everyone." Mitchell raised a hand to signal for calm. "Officer Reynolds, effective immediately, you are suspended pending a further investigation. We will thoroughly review your actions and determine the appropriate disciplinary measures." Reynolds stood up abruptly, his face a mix of anger and defiance. "This is absurd. I was just following the rules." Mitchell's tone was resolute. "The rules are designed to protect everyone, not to be wielded as tools for bias and misconduct. We'll be conducting a comprehensive review of your actions tonight." As Reynolds left the room, Marcus turned to Mitchell, his frustration slightly eased by a hint of hope. "What happens now?" Mitchell's expression softened slightly. "We'll conduct a thorough investigation into this incident. Your experience will be pivotal in addressing the flaws in our procedures and ensuring that similar situations don't occur in the future." Marcus nodded, a mixture of relief and exhaustion evident in his expression. "I appreciate that. I just hope this leads to meaningful change." Mitchell extended a hand as he stood up. "We'll do everything in our power to ensure that it does. Thank you for your patience and cooperation." Marcus shook Mitchell's hand, feeling a subtle shift in the weight of the evening's events as he left the precinct. The cool night air was a refreshing contrast to the oppressive tension that had hung over him inside. The unsettling experience had left him shaken, but it also sharpened his focus on the urgent issues that needed to be addressed. As he drove home, the whirlwind of his thoughts was a tumultuous mix of frustration, determination, and a burgeoning clarity about the systemic flaws that had been laid bare. The lights of Cedarville flickered past him in a disorienting blur, each one a stark reminder of the daunting road ahead and the hope that a future marked by justice and reform was possible. Upon arriving at the City Hall, Marcus found Chief Anderson and several city council members already gathered. The room was arranged with a large, polished table in the center, and everyone was seated, their anticipation palpable. Chief Anderson, a veteran officer known for his calm demeanor and authoritative presence, looked up as Marcus entered, his gaze steady and expectant. "Good morning, Chief," Marcus greeted, extending his hand for a firm shake. "Good morning, Mayor," Chief Anderson replied, his tone measured. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. We're here to discuss the events of last night and how we move forward from here." Marcus took his place at the head of the table, his posture straight and his expression one of resolve and focus. Last night's incident was deeply troubling. Officer Reynolds' actions were not only unwarranted but also indicative of more significant, systemic issues within our police force. Council Member Davis, a middle-aged man known for his directness and no-nonsense approach, spoke up with a sense of urgency. We've all reviewed the reports, and it's clear that this isn't an isolated case of misconduct. It's a symptom of broader systemic problems that need to be addressed comprehensively. Marcus nodded in agreement, his mind racing with the gravity of the situation. Precisely. We need to take a holistic approach to tackle these issues. This involves a thorough review of our procedures, implementing rigorous training programs, and most crucially, working to rebuild and restore trust between the police force and our community. Chief Anderson leaned forward, his expression serious and intent. We're fully committed to addressing these problems. An internal review has already been initiated, but we need your support and leadership to drive through the necessary changes and ensure they have a lasting impact. Marcus scanned the faces of the council members, searching for their commitment to meaningful reform. What specific changes are we looking at, and what steps are necessary to implement them? The room fell into a focused silence as Chief Anderson began to outline the proposed changes, each one a step toward rebuilding trust and ensuring accountability. The path forward was clear but daunting, requiring courage, perseverance, and a unified commitment to transforming the system for the better. Chief Anderson exhaled deeply, the weight of the discussion ahead apparent in his posture. First and foremost, we need to ensure that our officers are held accountable for their actions, he began, his voice steady. This means overhauling our disciplinary procedures to ensure they are both fair and transparent. We must also be proactive in revising our approach to handling complaints to prevent any potential biases from influencing outcomes. He paused, gauging the reactions of the room before continuing. Investing in comprehensive training programs is also crucial. Programs that address issues of bias and aim to improve our relationships with the community. These changes are essential for fostering trust and accountability. Councilmember Garcia, known for her dedication to social justice issues, chimed in with a thoughtful suggestion. Alongside these internal reforms, we should consider establishing a civilian oversight board. Such a board would provide an additional layer of accountability and serve as a direct channel for community concerns. It would ensure that the voices of Cedarville's residents are actively involved in the oversight of our police department. Marcus nodded, appreciating the direction of the conversation. A civilian oversight board could indeed be a significant step forward. It would empower the community to play a role in monitoring and evaluating the police department's actions, which could be crucial in restoring and maintaining trust. Chief Anderson agreed, his expression thoughtful. However, to be effective, this board would need to be carefully structured. We'd need to define its powers and responsibilities clearly to avoid any potential conflicts or inefficiencies. Its role must be well delineated to ensure it functions properly and delivers on its intended goals. Councilmember Davis turned to Marcus, seeking his input on the next steps. What are your thoughts on how we should proceed with implementing these changes? Marcus took a moment to collect his thoughts before responding. Our first step should be to draft a comprehensive proposal outlining these proposed reforms. This draft should include the creation of the Civilian Oversight Board, details about the revised training programs, and updated disciplinary procedures. We also need to engage with the community through public forums to gather their input and feedback. Cedarville's residents must have a hand in shaping these reforms to ensure they are both effective and widely supported. Chief Anderson nodded in agreement. Engaging the community is key. Their involvement will not only help us refine these proposals, but also build broader support for the changes we're aiming to implement. The discussion continued, delving into the specifics of the proposed reforms. There were detailed debates about the Oversight Board's composition and powers, the breadth of the training programs, and the mechanisms for ensuring rigorous accountability. Despite the complexities and challenges ahead, there was a palpable sense of commitment and purpose among the participants. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope. While the path to reform would undoubtedly be arduous, the commitment from Chief Anderson and the city council members was a crucial first step. With the community's support and a shared dedication to meaningful change, there was a strong foundation for rebuilding trust and ensuring justice in Cedarville. Marcus left the conference room, a quiet determination bolstering him despite the heavy weight of the previous night's events. The path to reform had only just begun, but for the first time there was a palpable sense of progress. The dialogue had shifted from mere discussion to actionable plans, signaling the start of a meaningful journey. As he walked through the corridors of the town hall, the early morning light filtered through the windows, casting a gentle glow that seemed to promise new beginnings. The light, along with the supportive atmosphere of the town hall, served as a reminder of the potential for positive change. Though the road ahead was bound to be demanding and fraught with challenges, Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope and commitment to seeing this transformative process through. By the time Marcus arrived at the Cedarville Town Hall's main auditorium for the public forum, the space was brimming with energy and anticipation. The room, with its high ceilings and rows of chairs extending from the front to the back, was packed with concerned citizens, local activists, and community leaders. They had gathered to discuss the recent events and the proposed reforms for the police department. The buzz of conversation and the palpable tension in the air underscored the gravity of the moment. As Marcus wove through the sea of faces toward the stage, he could feel the collective weight of the community's hope and anxiety. The makeshift stage at the front of the room was modest but functional, equipped with a podium and a few chairs for the panelists. Among the panelists were Chief Anderson, a representative from the Civilian Oversight Board, and several city council members, each one poised to address the issues at hand. Marcus took a deep breath as he approached the podium, mentally preparing himself for the evening's critical discussions. The crowd fell silent as he began to speak, his voice resonating with a blend of authority and genuine empathy. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I understand that many of you are deeply concerned about the recent incident involving the police and the broader issues of trust and accountability that have arisen from it. I want to assure you that these concerns are being taken seriously, and we are committed to addressing them with the urgency and transparency they deserve. A murmur of approval swept through the audience, a sign of cautious optimism. Marcus continued, his words carefully chosen to convey both reassurance and determination. Tonight we're here to discuss the proposed reforms and to listen to your thoughts and suggestions. We want this process to be as transparent and inclusive as possible, and your input is crucial to shaping the path forward. As Marcus concluded his introduction, Chief Anderson took his place at the microphone, his presence commanding immediate respect. We've outlined several key areas for reform, he began, his tone serious and measured. These include changes to our disciplinary procedures, enhancements to officer training, and the establishment of a civilian oversight board. Our goal is to address these incidents appropriately and to work towards rebuilding the trust that has been eroded between the police and the community. The diverse crowd responded with a mixture of curiosity, hope, and skepticism. After Chief Anderson's presentation, the floor was open for public comments. One by one, citizens rose to share their experiences, opinions, and concerns. The range of voices reflected the community's deep investment in the issue and their collective desire for meaningful change. Each testimony, whether marked by frustration, hope, or constructive criticism, underscored the urgency of the reform process and the shared commitment to fostering a more accountable and trustworthy police force. The community forum was buzzing with energy as Lisa, a young woman renowned for her activism, took the microphone. "I've witnessed firsthand how biased practices have affected our community," she began, her voice carrying a note of urgency. "It's crucial that the Civilian Oversight Board isn't just a symbolic gesture. We need it to have real power to hold officers accountable effectively." Marcus listened intently, nodding in acknowledgement of her concerns. "Thank you, Lisa. We recognize the importance of ensuring that the Oversight Board has substantive authority. We're in the process of defining its powers to ensure it can truly make a difference." Next to speak was Tom, a middle-aged man who had been a Cedarville resident for decades. His voice held a mix of nostalgia and cautious optimism. "I've lived in this town my entire life, and this is the first time I've seen such a concerted effort from both the police and the community. It's a step in the right direction. But we need to ensure that these reforms are not only implemented but address the underlying issues that led to these problems in the first place." Marcus responded with a tone of appreciation. "Your perspective is valuable, Tom. We agree that effective implementation is crucial, and we are committed to carrying out these reforms with accountability and thoroughness." Throughout the evening, the forum became a stage for a wide range of perspectives. Community members voiced their support and criticism with candor and passion. The discussions were intense and reflective of the deep-seated issues and the collective yearning for genuine change. As Marcus absorbed the varied feedback, he was struck by the recurring themes in the comments: the need for transparency, accountability, and meaningful community engagement. The active involvement of the public was a powerful testament to the community's dedication to reform and justice. As the forum neared its conclusion, Reverend Johnson, a local pastor known for his calm and measured approach, took the floor. "We all share the goal of a safer and more just Cedarville," he said, his voice soothing and steady. "It's crucial that we approach these reforms with unity and an understanding that true change takes time. Let's support one another and work together to make this town a better place for everyone." Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope as he listened to Reverend Johnson's words. The evening had been emotionally charged, but it was clear that the community's commitment to change was unwavering. The dialogue not only provided valuable insights, but also reinforced the collective resolve to address the issues at hand and move toward a more just and equitable Cedarville. As the forum came to a close, Marcus stepped down from the stage, his heart a tangled mess of relief and resolve. The evening had been a powerful demonstration of Cedarville's resilience and collective commitment to justice. The conversations had been both candid and constructive, laying a crucial foundation for the reforms that lay ahead. While the road to change would undoubtedly be fraught with obstacles, the enthusiastic engagement of the community provided a beacon of hope and a vital ingredient for success. As he walked out of the auditorium, he glanced back at the room, now softly lit and filled with the gentle murmur of post-forum discussions. The atmosphere was one of cautious optimism, as the groundwork for restoring trust and accountability was being laid. The path was long and filled with challenges, but Marcus felt a deep-seated determination to see the process through to its successful conclusion. Stepping into the cool night air, Marcus was greeted by the crisp, refreshing breeze that seemed to invigorate his spirit. The sun had just begun to rise over Cedarville, casting a soft glow on the town hall as he walked through its familiar corridors, now imbued with a newfound sense of urgency. The public forum from the previous evening had set a clear and actionable path, and today marked the pivotal moment to start implementing those plans. The usual bustle of the office was already in full swing, and Carla was at her desk, diligently sorting through a stack of documents with her characteristic efficiency. "Good morning, Mr. Jones," Carla greeted him, her voice bright and welcoming despite the early hour. "I've got the latest updates on the reform initiatives and a few reports from the police department." Marcus returned her smile and took a seat at his desk, the weight of the previous night's discussions still fresh in his mind. Morning, Carla. Let's go through everything. I want to make sure we're poised to tackle this head-on. Carla handed him a folder filled with the latest drafts of the reform proposals and a list of key action items. Here's the draft of the Civilian Oversight Board proposal, along with the proposed schedule for the training programs. The police department has also sent over their initial feedback. Marcus opened the folder and began reviewing the documents. The proposals for the Oversight Board and training programs were thorough and addressed many of the concerns voiced by the community during the forum. Despite this, he knew that turning these plans into reality would demand meticulous oversight and unwavering commitment from all parties involved. Let's start by going through the feedback from the police department, Marcus said, his eyes scanning the initial pages with focused intent. I want to get a clear understanding of their perspective before we proceed. Carla nodded, her fingers tapping away at her computer to pull up the relevant reports. Here's the feedback from Chief Anderson and his team. They've raised a few concerns about the proposed timeline and the logistics of the training programs. As Marcus delved into the feedback, he found himself contemplating the delicate balance between urgency and practicality. The concerns raised by Chief Anderson highlighted the complexities of implementing systemic change, and Marcus knew that navigating these challenges would be a critical part of ensuring the reforms were both effective and sustainable. The road ahead would be demanding, but the commitment from the community and the insights from the police department provided a solid foundation on which to build. With a deep breath, Marcus prepared to tackle the intricacies of the task, determined to see the reforms through and make a lasting impact on Cedarville. Marcus carefully reviewed the feedback he had received. Most of the concerns were logistical, focusing on the feasibility of the proposed training schedules and the need for additional resources. While these concerns were valid, Marcus was determined to maintain the momentum of the reform process. I see the concerns raised, Marcus said, setting the documents aside with a decisive motion. We need to address these issues, but we can't let them derail our timeline. Let's arrange a meeting with Chief Anderson and the training coordinators to work out the details. Carla nodded, her pen moving swiftly over her notepad. I'll schedule that meeting for later this morning. Additionally, I'll draft a response to the police department outlining our plan to address their concerns. Marcus prepared for his upcoming meeting with Chief Anderson, reviewing the key points of the reform proposal and formulating responses to the feedback from the police department. As he walked through the corridors of the town hall, he felt a mix of anticipation and resolve. The hallway seemed quieter than usual, amplifying his thoughts as he approached the meeting room. The room was set up with a large table and several chairs, reflecting the seriousness of the discussions to come. Marcus entered to find Chief Anderson already seated, reviewing a stack of documents. The chief looked up and offered a nod of acknowledgement as Marcus took his seat across from him. Good morning, Chief, Marcus greeted, his tone both professional and warm. Thank you for making time to meet. I want to address the feedback you provided and discuss how we can move forward with implementing the reforms. Chief Anderson returned the nod. Good morning, Mayor. I appreciate your willingness to work through these issues. We're committed to making these reforms effective, but there are practical considerations we need to address. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but open. I understand. Let's start with the concerns about the training programs. What specific issues are you encountering with the proposed timeline? If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Chief Anderson began to review his notes. The primary issue is the availability of resources and trainers. The schedule we proposed is quite ambitious, and we're concerned about our capacity to meet these deadlines without compromising the quality of the training. Marcus listened intently, considering the chief's concerns. We need to strike a balance between the urgency of these reforms and our practical constraints. Perhaps we can adjust the timeline slightly to accommodate these issues. Prioritizing key areas of training could be a solution. Additionally, we might explore options for securing additional resources, including the possibility of bringing in external trainers if necessary. Chief Anderson's expression softened slightly, showing appreciation for the flexibility. That approach could work. It's also crucial that the training remains comprehensive and addresses all aspects of the proposed reforms. Marcus nodded, a sense of progress in the air. Agreed. We'll need to ensure that the training covers all the critical areas while being adaptable to our available resources. I'm confident we can find a solution that maintains the integrity of the reforms and meets our practical needs. The discussion continued with both parties exploring potential adjustments to the training schedule and resource allocation. The meeting was a productive step towards refining the reform proposal and addressing the practical challenges that had been raised. As the meeting concluded, Marcus felt a renewed sense of optimism. While the path ahead would involve navigating various logistical hurdles, the commitment to effective and meaningful reform remained strong. With the chief's cooperation and a clear plan in place, Marcus was more confident that the proposed changes would move forward successfully, paving the way for a more accountable and responsive police department. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Let's develop a revised schedule that incorporates your feedback and ensures the training remains both thorough and effective, he suggested, his voice carrying a note of resolve. As the discussion progressed, Marcus and Chief Anderson delved into the specifics of the updated training schedule, meticulously addressing the logistics of integrating the Civilian Oversight Board. Their dialogue was focused and productive, with both parties intent on finding viable solutions to the complexities at hand. They navigated through various concerns, from the allocation of resources to the timing of implementation, working collaboratively to ensure that each aspect of the plan was addressed. By the end of the meeting, they had successfully negotiated a revised timeline and crafted a strategy to tackle the resource-related issues. Chief Anderson appeared more open and engaged, signaling a shift towards a more receptive attitude. Marcus, in turn, felt a tangible sense of progress and optimism. "Thank you for your cooperation," Marcus said as the meeting drew to a close. "I believe we are making significant strides. Let's ensure we maintain open lines of communication as we move forward with these reforms." Chief Anderson extended his hand for a handshake. "I appreciate your understanding and flexibility. We're committed to making these reforms work, and will do everything within our power to support this process." As Marcus left the meeting room, he was buoyed by a renewed sense of determination. The road ahead remained challenging, but the collaborative effort to address the issues and advance the reforms marked a promising step forward. Walking through the bustling corridors of the town hall, he observed the energetic activity and engaged community members, a tangible reminder of the broader support driving the reform efforts. Returning to his office, Marcus sat down at his desk, surrounded by updated documents and action items. The journey towards reform was far from complete, yet each incremental step brought Cedarville closer to a future defined by increased accountability and trust. The obstacles were considerable, but the clear path forward and the commitment demonstrated by both the police department and the community were encouraging. Marcus was resolute in his commitment to see the process through, motivated by the potential benefits for the entire community. The Cedarville Police Department's training facility was abuzz with activity on that unusually crisp August morning. Early sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting a warm and inviting glow across the expansive room. The facility was a well-equipped hub of learning, featuring a blend of classrooms designed for theoretical instruction and practical exercise areas for hands-on training, all meticulously arranged to cover the multifaceted demands of modern law enforcement. Marcus Jones, accompanied by Carla and a few of his trusted staff members, entered the facility with a palpable sense of anticipation. Today marked a pivotal moment, the launch of a comprehensive new training program aimed at addressing the critical issues underscored by recent reforms. Marcus was keenly interested in witnessing firsthand how these changes would unfold and whether they would meet the community's high expectations for progress and accountability. Inside the main training room, Chief Anderson was already in place, preparing for the day's session. The room was meticulously arranged with neatly aligned rows of chairs facing a large presentation screen, which was set up to facilitate the day's agenda. Officers filled the seats, their conversations a low hum of anticipation and curiosity as they awaited the start of the session. Marcus made his way to the front of the room, where Chief Anderson awaited him with a courteous nod. "Good morning, Mayor," Chief Anderson said, his voice steady and professional. "We're ready to get started." "Thank you for having me," Marcus responded, a smile betraying his blend of excitement and nerves. "Good morning, Chief. I appreciate the chance to observe the training today. I'm eager to see how these new programs are being implemented." As the session commenced, Chief Anderson stepped to the front and addressed the room. Today's training will center on three key areas: bias awareness, community engagement, and revised disciplinary procedures. We're fortunate to have several guest instructors joining us to provide a thorough and multifaceted perspective on these important topics. The officer's attention was riveted on Chief Anderson as he outlined the agenda, setting the stage for a day filled with learning and growth. The room buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose as the training session officially began. The first session of the training was conducted by Dr. Elena Martinez, a distinguished authority in the field of bias training. Dr. Martinez commenced her session with a compelling and thought-provoking presentation on the pervasive effects of unconscious bias within the realm of policing. Her engaging delivery captivated the audience as she meticulously detailed the subtle yet profound ways in which biases can influence decision-making and interactions with the community. As Dr. Martinez laid out practical, actionable strategies for identifying and mitigating these biases in everyday law enforcement activities, the room remained markedly attentive. The officers listened intently, absorbing the information with varying degrees of receptivity. Marcus, who was present to observe the training, noted the spectrum of reactions. Some officers appeared deeply engaged and reflective, their expressions indicating a willingness to grapple with the challenging content. In contrast, a few others exhibited signs of skepticism, their body language suggesting a more cautious or resistant stance. Despite the inherent difficulty of the subject matter, Marcus hoped that this session would ignite a meaningful process of introspection and eventual change. Following Dr. Martinez's presentation, there was a scheduled break for refreshments. Marcus seized this opportunity to mingle with several officers in an attempt to gauge their initial impressions of the training. Officer Collins, a seasoned veteran known for his no-nonsense demeanor, was particularly forthcoming. "It's refreshing to see some new perspectives introduced," he remarked. "We've been following the same procedures for so long that it's going to take some getting used to." Marcus acknowledged the inherent difficulty of embracing change. "Your openness is much appreciated. These reforms are designed to enhance our practices and rebuild community trust. Your feedback is crucial in ensuring that we're progressing in the right direction." The subsequent session shifted focus to community engagement and was led by local activist Maya Johnson. Maya shared her wealth of experience and insights on fostering effective communication between law enforcement and the community. Her session was interactive, featuring role-playing exercises that allowed officers to practice handling various scenarios with an emphasis on empathy and active listening. During Maya's session, the atmosphere in the room seemed to transform. Officers became more actively involved in the role plays, engaged in lively discussions, and posed thoughtful questions. Marcus observed a notable shift in the room's energy, a positive indication that the training was making an impact and resonating with the participants. As the day progressed, the final session addressed the revised disciplinary procedures, led by legal expert Thomas Reed. Thomas meticulously explained the new protocols for managing complaints and ensuring accountability, providing detailed examples of how these procedures would be implemented and what officers could expect in terms of oversight and consequences. By the end of the day, Marcus felt a sense of cautious optimism. The training had been both intense and intellectually stimulating, sparking a range of discussions and reflections among the officers. While there was still much work to be done, Marcus was hopeful that the day's sessions had set a solid foundation for meaningful progress and improvement. As the training session concluded, Marcus approached Chief Anderson, his curiosity evident. "Chief, how do you feel the training went?" he inquired, hoping for some insight into the session's impact. Chief Anderson took a moment to reflect before responding. "Overall, I think it was productive. There was a considerable amount of new information for the officers to absorb, and while the sessions were well received, we'll need to follow up with additional training and ongoing support to ensure that these concepts become fully integrated into our daily practices." Marcus nodded in agreement, acknowledging the chief's perspective. "I'm glad to hear that. We must keep the momentum going and continue providing support as the officers adapt to these changes." As the officers began to file out of the training room, Marcus took a moment to reflect on the day's events. The training had marked a significant step forward, but he understood that it was merely the beginning of a much larger process. The commitment to reform would require continuous effort, including sustained training, active community involvement, and consistent oversight. Walking out of the facility, Marcus felt the crisp evening air against his skin, a refreshing contrast to the intensity of the day. The events of the day had underscored that while change was challenging, it was both possible and necessary. As he drove away from the training facility, he felt a renewed sense of determination. The path to reform was long and fraught with obstacles, but the progress made was a vital part of building a better future for Cedarville. As the sun began to set over Cedarville, casting a warm glow over the town, Marcus reflected on the achievements of the day and the work that lay ahead. The journey of reform was ongoing, with each step bringing the town closer to a more just and equitable future. The days following the implementation of the new police training program were filled with anticipation and cautious optimism. The community, having actively participated in the discussions and reforms, was eagerly watching to see the tangible outcomes of these changes. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Feeling the weight of responsibility, Marcus prepared for the evening's town hall meeting. He knew this would be an important opportunity to provide an update on the progress made and address any concerns from the public. The commitment to reform was not just about implementing new practices, but also about engaging with the community and ensuring that their voices were heard. With a sense of purpose and resolve, Marcus stepped into the evening's meeting, ready to continue the important work of building a more accountable and community-focused police department. The town hall was once again brimming with residents, their faces a tapestry of hope and skepticism. The large room was meticulously arranged with rows of chairs oriented towards a stage where a panel of officials, including Marcus, Chief Anderson, and several city council members, prepared to address the community. An air of urgency filled the space as citizens eagerly awaited tangible evidence of the promised reforms taking shape. Marcus approached the podium, taking a moment to survey the crowd. Among the faces, he recognized some from past meetings and noticed many new ones, each etched with expressions of anticipation mingled with weariness. As he began to speak, his voice carried the weight of the community's high expectations and hopes for meaningful change. "Good evening," Cedarville Marcus began, his tone earnest. "Thank you all for coming out tonight. We're here to provide an update on the recent reforms and to hear your feedback on the changes we've implemented. Your involvement has been pivotal in this process, and we must ensure we're heading in the right direction. Standing beside Marcus, Chief Anderson prepared to present the latest developments. In recent weeks, we've rolled out new training programs focused on bias awareness, community engagement, and updated disciplinary procedures. Our commitment is to make sure these reforms result in genuine, meaningful change. As Chief Anderson spoke, the room was enveloped in a hushed silence, the audience listening with rapt attention. After a brief overview of the progress, the session transitioned to public comments, inviting residents to voice their thoughts and concerns. Lisa, a familiar face from previous forums and a vocal advocate for reform, took the microphone first. "I appreciate the efforts that have been made," Lisa said, her voice firm yet measured. "However, we need to see consistent results. Can you provide specific metrics or benchmarks that we can use to assess the effectiveness of these reforms?" Marcus nodded, acknowledging the crucial need for transparency. "Yes, Lisa, we're actively working on establishing clear metrics to evaluate the success of the training programs and the broader impact of the reforms. We plan to release regular reports to keep the community informed and engaged with our progress." As Lisa returned to her seat, Tom, a longtime resident known for his cautious optimism, rose to speak. "I'm heartened to see the changes taking place, but what about ongoing communication with the community? How will we ensure that feedback continues to influence the reform process?" Marcus responded with a nod of agreement. "Tom, maintaining an open line of communication is crucial. We're committed to not only implementing these reforms, but also to continually engaging with the community. We'll be setting up regular town hall meetings and feedback channels to ensure that your voices are heard and that the reform process remains responsive to your concerns." The room buzzed with a mix of reassurance and ongoing skepticism as the evening continued, with residents eager to see how these promises would translate into lasting change. Marcus responded to the community's concerns with reassurance. "We're committed to maintaining open lines of communication throughout this process. We will continue to hold regular town hall meetings and provide updates through various channels to keep everyone informed. Community feedback will remain a crucial component of our reform efforts." As the meeting continued, a young man named Jordan raised a pressing issue about recent police interactions. "I've noticed some positive changes, but there are still moments when it feels like the officers don't fully understand or respect the community they serve. What specific steps are being taken to address this issue?" Chief Anderson addressed Jordan's concern thoughtfully. "We understand that building trust is a gradual process. Our training programs are specifically designed to tackle these issues, and we are constantly assessing and refining our methods. We encourage continuous dialogue and feedback from the community to help us improve." The discussions continued with a blend of praise, concern, and suggestions. The comments reflected a range of experiences and viewpoints, revealing a community deeply engaged in the reform process. While there was recognition of the progress made, it was clear that there were still significant challenges to address. Reverend Johnson, who had previously spoken in support of the reform efforts, offered a message of hope and unity. "We have seen positive steps forward, but we must continue to work together to address the remaining issues. Change is a process, and we must stay united and focused on our shared goals." Marcus was heartened by Reverend Johnson's words. "Thank you, Reverend Johnson. Your encouragement is invaluable. We must remain committed to this process and support one another as we move forward." As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus and Chief Anderson took a moment to reflect on the evening's discussions. The high level of community engagement demonstrated the town's dedication to the reform process. The feedback received was both insightful and constructive, highlighting areas of progress and pointing out where further work was needed. Walking out of the town hall, Marcus felt a mix of satisfaction and determination. The community's responses had been thoughtful and constructive, reinforcing the importance of ongoing transparency and engagement. Although the path to reform was complex and challenging, the collective effort and commitment of Cedarville's residents were powerful drivers of positive change. The cool night air greeted Marcus as he left the town hall, the quiet streets of Cedarville a peaceful contrast to the busy and impactful evening. Driving through the town, Marcus was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey toward reform was far from complete, but each step forward brought Cedarville closer to a more just and equitable future. Guided by a shared commitment to justice and community, Marcus felt optimistic about the road ahead and the potential for continued positive transformation. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We've explored a range of important topics, from the challenges of reform and community engagement to personal reflections and resilience. Your participation and feedback are crucial as we continue to navigate these complex issues together. So, what have you learned so far? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below with one thing you've learned from this video and how you plan to put it into practice in your life. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Your support helps us continue to bring valuable insights and discussions to our community. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation.